This is the Mind of Mansion, and we have a new guest today, Justin Curry from the Player Profiler News Desk. The news desk has been popping. Justin Curry has been just a hero. He is the atlas of the news desk. There's a lot of great people in the news desk, but Justin Curry has really stood out. And he is here with me today because this has been a very busy week, the busiest week in the history of the news desk. The fearless news leader, Bradley Stalder, told me that there's never been more news blurbs on the website on playerprofiler.com than there have been this week. And so we're going to go through some of these things. There's a lot of fantasy fallout from free agency, and we talked about it on the Sonic Truth podcast through a dynasty lens, and now we're going to talk about it for best ball, for seasonal leagues, for dynasty. What are the ramifications for a lot of these moves, whether it be Christian Kirk going to the Texans, whether it be this brand new Seattle Seahawks team that we have. Most teams have some major changes, and it's going to take weeks for the best ball rankings in particular to shake themselves out and the ADPs to shake themselves out. Justin, welcome.
Thank you for having me, brother. Really excited to be here. Love talking football as much as humanly possible, so I'm ready to get into it with you.
So talk about the news desk. What's some of the experiences you've had with it, some of the more fun items you all have found and posted up on the site? Give us a little bit of an overview, and I'll put it up on the screen too.
I mean, the news desk for me was just kind of how I cut my teeth into the content space in large. And so I met some incredible people. I co-host Player Profiler News Desk today on Fridays with Brendan Booth, Biggs, and some of the things. I mean, just being able to feel like you're breaking the story. Like sometimes I'll see something that's important. I'm like, okay, cool, let's get on that.
Ashton Dulin re-signing with the Colts.
You're an Ashton Dulin trooper. That should get you excited. But I mean, he's a special teamer, so I don't know how excited that makes me from a fantasy perspective. But he's got all the tools. Like
True.
I mean, he's got all the tools. So 6'2", 215, 4'4". You know, he caught a 54-yard touchdown in the opener. I'm wanting for someone to step forward in that in that quarterback room so that we could get all of the fantasy goodness that just is laying at our feet, but nobody to drive the bus.
Well, he is an injury away from being an injury away. And
right.
that's something. That's something. When he is in the lineup, he makes plays. We've seen him catch 50-yard bombs for touchdowns. He makes plays. He was a dominant college receiver at a small school, Malone College. He will probably make his way through the league, play out to age 30, and never have made a significant impact outside of special teams. And that is the life of a receiver from a small school. He's certainly going to have a better career, a longer career than, say, Jeff Janis from Saginaw Valley State, the 7th rounder. Right. But if you're not at the right place at the right time with the right coach, you're not going to be able to crack the starting lineup if you are a 7th rounder with flaws. Now, if you're a day 3 pick like Stephon Diggs, then you're going to be undeniable. If you're Antonio Brown, you're going to be undeniable. There's certainly undeniable talents that get promoted all the way up quickly, even though they get drafted in the 5th round. Ashton Dulin's not that. Jeff Janis was not that. But had they had the early round draft, let's say they were 3rd round picks, right? Yeah, then eventually it would happen for them. Eventually they would get an opportunity. Eventually they would be DME Brown.
Right. You're just hoping for an opportunity as a 7th round pick. And he did whatever he had to do to make sure that he maintained an NFL paycheck, because at the end of the day, he's still an NFL player. He walks into any gym in America, and he's probably the most athletic guy there. And you can see that when given opportunity, it's, it bears itself out. I mean, Anthony Richardson hit him for a 50-yard touchdown in the opener last year. However, the problem is you got Josh Downs, who's confirmed good. You have you have Michael Pittman, the big money guy, and now you have Adonai Mitchell. So I like an injury away from being an injury away from having an opportunity. So I can't I just can't pass. I can't pass like I can't see it happening, but also you know that he has the talent to do so. But I didn't plan on talking about Ashton Dulin, but I
No,
appreciate the lob there.
I saw the Ashton Dulin blurb and I was like, well, this is how we know the news desk is doing work if we're getting down to the Ashton Dulins. But Daniel Jones to the Colts quietly matters because Adonai Mitchell with Anthony Richardson is irrelevant. There's no way Anthony Richardson's going to make it through to the third read. Okay. And there's just not enough targets to go around. For all those dropbacks, 10 of them are going to be runs. And so you divide up the targets, and it's not going to happen for Adonai Mitchell as long as it's Anthony Richardson. If it's Joe Flacco, if it's Daniel Jones even, then this is very good for Adonai Mitchell.
It could be really good for Adonai Mitchell. We've got to take into account that Daniel Jones, maybe he's grown as a passer. Now, if we can keep him protected, that's an important piece. And you have to hope that Adonai Mitchell can, well, the passing pie has to become bigger for the Colts, which I do agree it probably does under Daniel Jones. I mean,
Yeah,
he's a freak athlete. He's a
I don't
freak
think that
athlete.
Daniel Jones is that accurate of a passer. I don't think he's that, but Sam Darnold was able to, this is all we're talking about. As long as you could be Sam Darnold, Gardner Minshew, as long as you can operate the offense and drop back and throw when called upon and not just panic and put your head down and run, then you're going to be a positive for the wide receiver core anytime they're going from a run-first quarterback to a pass-first quarterback. And the nice thing about Daniel Jones is when he does scramble, it's to get first downs and to sustain drives. So in that way, Daniel Jones, underrated. The Vikings were grooming him to be their backup quarterback. They wanted him, and the Colts said, I think there was like a mini bidding war on Daniel Jones. Once the Sam Darnold domino fell, there was a bunch of teams interested in Daniel Jones for good reason. He has all the tools. He was a top 10 pick for a reason. He is, and always has been, like the quintessential backup quarterback, a guy that can get in there, run around, make things happen as a strong, but he's not a guy that you want as your starter.
Yeah, he's not the guy that you pay $40 million a year and let your generational running back walk. I was hoping that he got to go somewhere and learn from like a football mastermind in the vein of a Sean McVay or a Kyle Shanahan, or Kevin O'Connell has proven himself to be the quarterback whisperer, this new age quarterback whisperer. First it was Sean McVay, then you got Dave Canales, which they're not going to bring him in to back up Bryce. So I was hoping that he could go somewhere and just learn, because I don't think that he's ever had that opportunity to have. Daboll's a good coach, but him being in the fire, him constantly being under siege in 2023, that shell shocked him, and he was never going to recover from how brutal the New York media is. So maybe being in a smaller market, maybe being able to win this job potentially against Anthony Richardson, who Pat McAfee has waged a quiet, passive aggressive war against. I think that this could be good. I'm not a Daniel Jones believer. I was fooled by his rookie season where he threw 24 touchdowns. So I hope that he gets an opportunity to learn and develop, and that maybe could blossom into something just like Sam Darnold did.
What is McAfee saying?
Oh, McAfee is every single chance that he gets, he's throwing a passive aggressive blurb about how, or barb rather, about how Anthony Rich, like, he's not professional, he's not working hard. There's more rumors coming out of the building about how he's not taking it seriously and is not meeting the standard that's been set by quarterbacks of the yesteryear of the Colts.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Per the New York Post.
Yeah.
Pat McAfee talks up Daniel Jones as he pushes for Colts to trade Anthony Richardson. Well, all right then.
So, I mean, when you got a guy with a platform that's that big, that's that entrenched and ingrained and ingratiated into the culture and fabric of a building and an organization, it has the ear of the owner. That does not bode well for you, especially when you've got those negative marks on your resume already.
I I think Adonai Mitchell is very interesting. I just think
Yes.
I pulled up his stats: 775 air yards last year. I had no idea he had 775 air yards. He had more air yards than double his actual yards. So in terms
Yes.
of like unrealized air yards per target, he might have been at the top of the league. So, and that's just a combination of Joe Flacco's still not great. It's not like Joe Flacco is one of the better downfield throwers, one of the better quarterbacks in the league. No. He's just Joe Flacco is at the very end of a nice, very super solid Super Bowl winning, Trent Dilfer plus career. But that it's not like Adonai Mitchell's ever had a true accurate pocket passer to throw to. It'd be interesting to see what he could do because he is a super athlete. And what we know is these Texas receivers, none of them are going to be that dominant when they're competing for targets with Xavier Worthy and Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond. And the Dominator was still solid. Like in his final year at Texas, still put up 32.4% Dominator rating, which was 62nd percentile. I like it.
Listen.
I like Downs more. Of course, I like Downs more. Downs is the best receiver of that trio. Do you believe that to be true?
Yeah, I love Josh Downs. I've
Okay.
been off the Michael Pittman deal for a little while now. He never took the step forward that I was anticipating, and I really like Josh Downs coming out. And the one thing that we can trust Anthony Richardson to do is get the ball to Josh Downs in the short area, and Josh Downs can do more with it after the catch. So I personally have been trying to buy Josh Downs in dynasty leagues all across the offseason with all the tumult and uncertainty in the quarterback room. But another guy like Adonai Mitchell to me is, I mean, he's essentially a George Pickens clone, but with a little bit better speed and a little bit worse, well, a much worse situation. So he never got the opportunity, a real opportunity. I mean, he had 6 catches for 62 yards, I believe, against the Vikings. That was his season high. And then he had a flash play against the Jets. I mean, in week one, if I'm not mistaken, most of those air yards, over a quarter of those air yards came because Anthony Richardson missed him on 2 long bomb plays. So you could see the talent there. He can get behind the defense. There's no question about that. The question is just whether or not, one, he's going to get the requisite snaps and the targets. And is there someone who could put the ball in his vicinity for it to happen?
I think Michael Pittman is a faker alpha than DK Metcalf and T. Higgins.
Ooh.
I think because he looks so good. Like I've stood next to Michael Pittman on a football field at the Senior Bowl in Mobile. He's 6'4", he's 225. He's very good looking, and he carries himself very, with a chin up, lots of gravitas. Okay, and yet you look at his stats, and has never had a season of 1,300 or more air yards. If you're going to be an X receiver, a proper alpha, you got to be putting up 1,300 plus air yards per year. This is a possession receiver with an alpha body. That's what it is. And the funny thing is Josh Downs is an alpha with a possession receiver's body. It's funny.
Yeah. I mean, you quote you.
Imagine if they could switch places. Imagine if you could give Josh Downs Michael Pittman's body. What he would do with that? What Josh Downs would be the best receiver in the league.
We're gonna body swap Josh Downs.
If they body swapped, there's a movie like in the 80s where they could trade places. Oh, can you imagine?
Listen, I think that there's much more meat on the bone left for Josh Downs. Like just seeing how much he's improved and hearing how they talk about him in the building. I listened to Zaire Franklin's podcast, and he would just talk so glowingly. He spoke well. He never speaks ill about anybody, but you can hear there's coded language in how NFL players talk about their teammates and like some of the things they see them do. And it was always like, man, Josh Downs, oh my God, we couldn't do anything with Josh. You always heard these little things before he got bullied into quitting his podcast about how good Josh Downs was. So I'm excited for Josh Downs. I'm excited for Adonai Mitchell. Man, on Michael Pittman. I mean, he's a value where he's going at in drafts just because he's going to command a ton of targets. But I just don't.
I mean,
it doesn't
I don't
inspire
know.
me.
With Adonai Mitchell out there, I don't know if there's what's the big difference between Adonai Mitchell and Michael Pittman. I think they're similar. Adonai Mitchell is a little more explosive. Look at the explosive plays on Player Profiler.
I agree.
39th in the league for Michael Pittman. He doesn't deliver what his body
tells you he should be delivering. Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Thank you. I mean,
I'm with you.
His body can certainly write the checks, but they don't get cashed.
I mean, it got him a big one. They got him a big check, but now we got to turn that into production, champ.
It's not going to happen. So I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. And in the chat, they're saying that we're sleeping on Alec Pierce. Okay, Sam B says that we're sleeping on Alec Pierce, and I get it, man. I get it. But it just so happens that this team drafted Adonai Mitchell in the second round. I don't know why they did. They had just drafted Josh Downs in the second round, and they had Michael Pittman, who was an early second rounder.
Alec Pierce was a second-round pick, too.
And Alec Pierce himself was a second-round pick. So this team loves to draft receivers in the second round, which is the right round to draft receivers because they have one of the better GMs in the league. But Alec Pierce is a situational deep threat. He's going to have weeks. But now he's the fourth receiver. I mean, you have to believe that after camp closes, it's going to be Mitchell in the number 3 chair.
Well, I mean, he was their cardio receiver in 2023. I mean, he ran the most. I think he ran the most routes of any receiver in 2023. And then 2024, that actually bears some sort of fruit. So yes, it does seem like we're just dissing Alec Pierce, but you can't rely on 22 yards a catch. And we've already talked about how, hit or miss the quarterback play is. So what's your expectation for us if we're sleeping on Alec Pierce, man? I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that looks like from a fantasy perspective. Like in best ball, absolutely. But are you putting him in your lineup? Do you feel confident putting him in your lineup?
I don't even know if I'm drafting. Like I said, if I have already penciled in Adonai Mitchell to take the job in training camp and preseason, why am I drafting Alec Pierce? Because he's still going to have to suffer through some weeks of Anthony Richardson. Okay, Daniel Jones not playing 17 games. That's not happening. There's going to be some mix. So, like, if you had to, the projections, probably 7 games, 8 games for Daniel Jones, around 10 games for Anthony Richardson until they trade him or until he's moved, if he is moved. Alec Pierce was always this guy, okay? At Cincinnati, he had a 25% dominator rating, which is 38th percentile, even though in his draft class, he had the 4th highest athleticism score for a receiver. It's just that in the league, he's had over 3 seasons. Think about this. We're talking about close to 3,500 air yards in just the first 3 seasons, and yet he maxed out in his rookie year with 41 catches. That is the cardio club member of NFL wide receivers. It's fine. It's fine. Kenny Stills, these players, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, they have situational value. Alec Pierce is more valuable to an NFL team than he is for fantasy. And he's not going to be producing enough. He's certainly not going to go, put up close to 1,500 air yards this year. It's not. No, there were a bunch of injuries last year. Downs missed some time. Pittman missed some time. Pittman wasn't right the entire year. And Adonai Mitchell was a rookie. Different year. Now he's going to fade more. And they're going to have packages where he's going to be out there. That's fine. But that's not enough to draft a guy. In best ball, it has to be a certain offense where you're going to be drafting the number 4 receiver or the guy you project to be the number 4 receiver. And that ain't Alec Pierce, man. Not with the Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson offense can't support a number 4 receiver in best ball. No way.
No. I mean, it's one of the only reason, well, in my opinion, the reason that this hit last year is because you got the pockets of Joe Flacco. I mean, against Jacksonville, he has the huge game, and then he'll randomly have spike weeks. Anthony Richardson has a weird connection with Alec Pierce. He has a weird connection with Alec Pierce, and it just so happens that Alec Pierce is going to be way down the field where Anthony Richardson is best throwing the ball, and it might work.
Alec Pierce has a skill. Bo Buckley in the chat is correct. He's really good at tracking the deep ball. He is the mesh point strategically of Anthony Richardson and the Colts wide receivers. But if it's going to be Daniel Jones, and we're projecting, like I said, let's say 7 to 8 games of Daniel Jones, Alec Pierce is a non-factor. You're going to get more downs in those. I mean, if you have downs, you're very much rooting for a trade that Pat McAfee gets his way. If you have a lot of Josh Downs like I do.
So what is that? What would that trade capital look like for you? Like, what would you be willing to give up to take a flyer on an Anthony Richardson?
If I'm an NFL GM?
If you're an NFL GM.
What do you think he commands now? What's his market? A second round pick? Is that what is he down to a second round pick? 47% completion percentage last year. They're bringing in Daniel Jones for competition. He was benched for Joe Flacco. At most a second round pick, if not a third, right?
Yeah, I would go third and maybe like a late round pick swap, like a 5th or a 6th round pick swap. I couldn't do anything more than that because I'm looking for starters, and this would be a reclamation project by somebody who had to have a plan in place to use this guy.
I can't believe it, man. I can't believe a guy is a top 5 pick, and just after 2 years, you wouldn't even be able to get a second rounder for him. Because I'm thinking Jimmy Garoppolo commanded a second rounder, and everyone thought that was a steal. Remember, that was a steal by the San Francisco 49ers to get Garoppolo for a second rounder. Quarterback with that skill set, second rounder. But if I'm sitting there, and then you have to actually think about the players going to be available in the second round, and you're like, well,
exactly.
Yeah, I guess I'd rather have like these Iowa State receivers.
Exactly. Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, especially Higgins. I mean, obviously Higgins for the size profile.
Higgins 6'4", is there. Do you really rather have Anthony Richardson if you're an NFL team? I don't think so.
Right. I mean, there's going to be a ton of the tackle class is awesome. You've got, I mean, Amar Mimbu probably just, combined his way into a first round pick, but Ariante Ursary, you've got, you've got the edge rushers galore. I mean, every mock draft that I've done, there's been the 6'7" freak from Arkansas that's available. Landon Jackson, he's available at the beginning of the second round. So, yeah, a second round pick would be out of the question. I would have to be in the third, and then maybe put some little sauce on it with an extra, a late round pick swap to get that done. But yeah, you just can't. Well, it would be fine if they found their guy and they were just trying to unload capital. But I don't think that with the rumors that are coming out and then him tapping out of the game on national television and then telling everybody he tapped out of the game, just lie. If he lies, none of this is an issue. He never gets benched. We don't have any of these questions. We're just like, can he develop as a passer?
You can't win either way, though. You can't win either way because that is revealing that he doesn't have the leadership qualities to even know what's going to be embarrassing. Right? So yeah. It's a tough situation, man. You're so quickly exposed in this league, and it's in so many fantasy gamers will go to Player Profiler looking for reasons to maintain hope to put this guy in their truther basket. To go,
Yeah.
to go trade for this guy in Dynasty. Why not? Especially, 2-quarterback league. Oh my God, imagine. Well, look at Josh Allen. 2 seasons, he was terrible. And then you see, there's ways you could talk, but he's such an outlier, Josh Allen, such an
Mm-hmm.
outlier that we just you see a guy that's a top 5 pick get benched in year 2 and put up a 47% completion percentage. You don't need to look at any other numbers. You see him having an embarrassing situation where now his leadership is being questioned. And now, listen, Baker Mayfield came back. Members of the media sold out on Baker Mayfield, right? Colin Cowherd criticized him. He had scandals where he was with women in a parking lot. Remember, he was having women meet him in like a Kmart parking lot. It was really he had a low point, and then he was on the Rams. People forget he was. It wasn't just Browns to Tampa. It was several other teams gave him a chance.
It was Carolina. It was the Rams, and I think that Rams stop is what saved him. That's what always. When I see a guy that has obvious talent go somewhere with a quarterback, like a quarterback coach, a guy who has a brilliant offensive mind, and they teach these guys. I mean, you look at what Dave Canales, and then eventually he gets with Dave. He has that time with the Rams where he gets to finish out the year, and that I feel like that's invaluable. Then he goes to Dave Canales, confirmed quarterback whisperer. Reclamation project with Geno. Now Geno's a viable NFL starter. Then he does it with Baker. Then he again does it. He benches Bryce. I mean, he just knows what buttons to push. And so I want to see that. I want to see those guys go somewhere where they can just sit back, learn. There's no pressure. I mean, the microwave NFL culture that we live in now, everybody was ready to say Bryce was one of the biggest busts of all time before he came back into the lineup this year.
All this being said, we're out on Anthony Richardson. It's just a different thing. It's just different. It's just the spidey senses are just, it's different. And
no, all the red flags are there, and you're talking yourself into why it could work as opposed to realizing like, hey, we're careening off a cliff going 75.
Baker Mayfield was an absolutely epic and efficient, prolific college passer, and no one ever questioned his leadership. No one ever questioned his work ethic. That was never an issue. It was like, size and and then he had injuries, right? He had these shoulder injuries, and so there was a bunch of reasons. If a guy's taking himself out of the game, I mean, it's a wrap, man. It's a wrap. I hate to say it. I love players I just love players that are, able to change the math of the game. And so it's just it's heartbreaking. Now, when we were talking on the Sonic Truth about Bucky Irving and how Bucky Irving's been rising in Dynasty, in his ADP in all formats, he's a mid-second rounder in best ball right now. He's a second rounder on FastDraft even. The Flex 4 game where you draft 6 guys, the top 4 into your lineup. And late second round, there goes Bucky Irving. It's like, whoa. Now, running backs were the key to victory last year with the Flex 4 game. So I understand it. And we should post the promo code here. Let's post the promo code up on the screen. Code Podfather gets you a $25 deposit match with code Podfather. FastDraft app in the App Store on Google Play. Check it out. We're almost to 100 reviews. So we're marching towards 100 reviews. If you're using FastDraft, if you're drafting in the Flex 4 game or the Origins all-rookie game, is super popular right now. Go ahead and drop a review in the App Store if you would. This Buccaneers team seems to be all systems go. It's like Baker Mayfield was never a bust. He's a 30 points per game quarterback. And I'm just like, I've seen quarterbacks fluctuate year to year. I've seen Brady have these huge years just situationally. The defense takes a step back. They acquire Randy Moss, whatever it is, and he goes from the QB 14 with Deion Branch to the QB 1. And we've seen this now happen with Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is now in the fallow period where the defense is one of the top defenses in the league. Certainly, and the key is the secondary. If you're shutting down the opposing team's passing game, then it's even less likely you're going to have to throw. And then that's what's happening to Patrick Mahomes, is that he's being starved of pass attempts. So at any point, a defense can rebound and be rebuilt, and then you're right back to 17 fantasy points per game if you're lucky. So this is one of those things where I'm like, yeah, we're living in a moment in time in Tampa, but I just can't fall for this Baker Mayfield is a complete superstar until I see one more season. Is that too much to ask, or am I just not seeing what's right in front of me?
I think that we probably just witnessed the best statistical season that we're going to see from Baker Mayfield. 4,500 yards, 41 touchdowns. We get to a point where you're hoping for a guy that's a primary, his fantasy production comes from the passing game. You're hoping for a guy to hit 4,530. Well, he exceeded that by 11 touchdowns. So, and that was with, Bucky stepping into a role, with Rachaad White taking a back seat to Bucky, with Mike Evans missing time, with Chris Godwin going out in week 7, and Jalen McMillan stepping up on the back half of the season. You could talk yourself into Baker Mayfield giving you another top 4 performance. And I think that would be an error. I mean, you just can't bet on pocket pass. The only guy that I would be willing to do that with is Joe Burrow. Their defense is bad enough. They're hemorrhaging money left and right. I would be willing to do that with Joe Burrow. I would be willing to bet that Baker regresses more back towards the back end of the top 12 quarterbacks, more like QB 7 to 11. He's going to throw for 4,000 yards now, but it's probably going to be more around 28 to 30 touchdowns like it was in 2023, as opposed to them just going nuclear. And, obviously Liam Cohen plays a big part in that. They promote their quarterback's coach. They promote Josh Grizzard, I believe his name is, their quarterback's coach, offensive coordinator. So you have some continuity that remains in the building, but it just doesn't make sense for you to, if you're bookmarking Baker for 4,541, you're not leaving yourself any room. You're not leaving yourself any room to be surprised. That doesn't feel good. And if it doesn't happen, then you're screwed, because you can't, there's nowhere for you to go.
Mike Evans in his 30s, and he is defying the Brandon Marshall archetype, where most of these big X-receivers, they decline very quickly. But eventually there's going to be a cliff year coming for Mike Evans. It's the year that you least expect it. It's like everyone's calling it a cliff year when he struggles. And then has
they're not going to tell you it's coming.
Right, the big week 17 and for underdog, but otherwise had, the year prior was a dud year for Mike Evans. And then he comes roaring back, right?
Right.
But going into his age 30 season, oh my God, he had a dud year. He was really inefficient. He's on the decline. And then all of a sudden, boom, everything clicks and he's back. That's when you're lulled into a false sense of security with a guy like Mike Evans, especially in Dynasty. You think you can roll it one more year when it is time to sell. Look at this Chris Godwin injury history. So, yes, Jalen McMillan is a nice possession receiver. It's fine. But everything fell into place perfectly for the Buccaneers. And the opponents that they faced at the right time, when they faced the Saints, when they faced the Panthers, it just all lined up. I'm sure they faced the Cowboys at their lowest moment last year. It was just, it's not sustainable. I can't draft these guys. How can you draft Bucky Irving? How can you draft Mike Evans? How can you draft even Chris Godwin? Looking at how can you do that? Coming off like a gruesome dislocated ankle after he had to reconstruct his knee, and he had like no explosive plays last year. It's like, okay, what are we talking about here? The Buccaneers offense is a mid-level NFL offense that just happened to be in a situation where they could throw a lot and put up 40-point weeks. That's going to happen. It happens every year. There's a couple teams that just happen to luck box the season. And that was the Buccaneers. And so you just have to, when you go and you draft a Buccaneer, just know, look, you're not going to get last year's statistics.
Well, you made an important point too about, pass defenses being able to shut down the opposing team's passing game, and that was the opposite of what happened in Tampa Bay last year. I mean, obviously, Todd Bowles is a wonderful, wonderful defensive mind, but they just didn't have the horses last year. They struggled in the secondary. Antoine Wingfield was hurt, so you're having to constantly score, like you said, and that leads to pace of play being increased, and you get ceiling outcomes from just about everybody involved in the offense. I mean, Mike Evans was great in the 14 games that he played, and then Chris Godwin was wide receiver 5 or 6 before he gets hurt, but they're constantly having to score. If that takes a step back and they're able to just kind of play ground control, ball control, hold the ball for 35, 36 minutes a game and not have to score, that lowers the ceiling of that offense significantly. So I love that point that you made there.
The second half of their year, it was just one checked out defense after another. So they had their bye in week 11. Okay. Mm-hmm. Look at this. Look at this schedule. Look at this, Justin. Look at this. The Giants right as they're just as they hit their post Daniel Jones era.
Yeah, they're fully capitulating to get the best pick possible at this point.
But look at this. Look at how things shook out. Now it's at Carolina. Now they're at week 14. Yes, you're starting to get teams that are in full tank mode, like the Raiders. Now again, somehow they went to the Chargers and they beat them 40-17. I don't know how the fuck that happened. Nobody knows. But they lost to the Cowboys. Here, I forgot about the loss. I knew they played the Cowboys at the optimal moment at their low point with Cooper Rush and everyone hurt on defense. I forgot they lost that game. And then, of course, to wrap up the season with Carolina and New Orleans. It's like, yeah, they won 48-14 against the Panthers at the end of the year. Okay. It was a race to the bottom. They were going in one direction, and everyone they were facing was in a race to the bottom.
Yep.
Except the Chargers. Yep. This one game. It's one game in the NFL. This Chargers game is what tilts the perception of the Buccaneers. Had this been a different team, and everyone would be just selling the Buccaneers because their schedule in the second half was just comedy. A comedy show.
I think you hit a very important point here. This Buccaneers win over the Chargers at Los Angeles, where they come in 2.5-point underdogs. That win gave them the street cred that you needed to validate everything that you felt about Bucky Irving, to give you, Baker Mayfield has a big performance that day. I can't recall the stats off the top of my head, but he had a big day that day. And Bucky Irving just continues his tear on the post-bye ascent. And so it just doesn't, like I said, you're paying a premium and you're hoping for a return, a premium return, but that just doesn't, that's not how, there's no value to be had there. There's no value to be had there.
What are you trying to accomplish? You take Bucky Irving in the second round of a draft. Does he have first round pick in 2026 upside? I don't think so. Not when you're competing for targets out of the backfield with Rachaad White. Not when you're 195 pounds. It doesn't make
he just accomplished something that only Alvin Kamara has in the last 8 years. Alvin Kamara is the only other person to do it, where he goes for over 1,500 yards from scrimmage on 50% of the snaps or less. So if at any point they decide to make that, to continue that, if he hits any sort of regression, we're in trouble. You're in absolute trouble. Again, you're buying at a premium, hoping for the best.
Listen. I like players like Bucky Irving, scat backs who can, also be trusted outside the tackles, inside the tackles. I don't care. If you're small, you're big. If I'm an NFL team, all my running backs are 200 pounds or 195 pounds. Don't care. Right? I'm not fetishizing the 220-pound running back. I just know that NFL teams like 220-pound running backs, typically.
There's a corollary between,
in this
size
particular
and
case, no, they decided to go with Bucky Irving. But this level of athleticism typically gets exposed eventually. Athleticism matters a lot more for running backs than it does for wide receivers. And just taking one season, which is a partial season as a starter, and just stamping stud on this guy is a mistake. I mean, I've fallen for this so many times, and so many people around me, and so many people I've had on shows have fallen for it so many times, and I'm just not doing it. I'm not doing it. I can't do it.
Well, he's going one pick in FastDraft ADP, the Flex 4. He's going one pick ahead of Josh Jacobs right now, and there's zero chance that I would take him ahead of Josh Jacobs.
His ceiling outcome this year is Josh Jacobs.
Yes.
That's his absolute ceiling outcome.
Yes.
This is what I'm talking about. Just set up the arbitrage experiment and be like, okay, what am I really getting here? And then there's a bunch of other running backs where things break their way. He gets crushed by those running backs. So,
I mean, you've got a whole laundry list of guys right behind him. So there's Josh, Breece, Chase Brown, Kyren Williams, James Cook, Chuba Hubbard. And all of those guys.
Kyren Williams is in a better situation to score fantasy points than
1,000%.
Bucky Irving. What the?
Yes.
I mean, I don't even like Kyren Williams. I don't even like James Cook. Come on, man. I can't believe this is happening. Something has happened. I think we've answered it. It's that Chargers game. That Chargers game, I think, broke everyone's brain.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about, if you go back to that point in time, that moment specifically in the season, we're talking about how awesome Jesse Minter's defense is, how great the Chargers are. They've outperformed expectations. They're a playoff team. They're in the wild card hunt, firmly cementing themselves into the playoff race, and their defense was playing lights out. I mean, and they go in and the Buccaneers absolutely beat the dog shit out of them. So you now have the confirmation bias of, oh, this is a really good team, a really, really good offense, combined with the fact that Bucky has a big day. And now that's what's stuck in people's minds, because I mean, even in the playoff game, he was good. He was 19 for 83 and a touchdown, but you still have to factor in the fact that he only played 50% of the snaps. At the end of the day, he played 50% of the snaps. He's 195 pounds. Even though the offensive coordinator is familiar, he may have had a difference in philosophy about the deployment of the running backs. There's too many questions and there's too many guys right behind him that I would be much more interested in having on my roster in that same range with less question marks.
He is going to go up against a lot more adversity this year, just because there's no way the schedule is going to be nearly this easy. It's not just going to be the Giants and all these injury-ravaged teams and all these teams that are tanking in the second half. By the way, at that moment that he gets handed the starting job, I mean, must be nice. It's pretty convenient, right? So let me get this straight. So Rachaad White, he's going to have to do the harder work in the first half against defenses that are actually healthy and actually not just mailing it in. And so what we're going to do is, after the bye, we're going to install Bucky, this undersized primary back, as the starter, and he's going to get to go up against just every team that's mailing it in across the league, and then the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean,
must be nice. Must be nice. Must be nice to live this like NFL version of the Truman Show if you're Bucky Irving.
Well, I mean, he comes out, they give him the 26 touches or whatever it is against the Carolina Panthers, and he essentially wins the game. And then the next week, I mean, you see him walking to the locker room with ice packs all over his body, and he can't practice the whole next week. And then he leaves that next game with a concussion. So you can see that his body is breaking down. It's not a kind, like, it wasn't kind to him. He wasn't just falling out of bounds because he is so physical and he doesn't go down he has great contact balance. He's taking a lot of punishment. And again, smaller backs, just the laws of physics, man. You're not going to be able to hold up against that workload.
James Cook is at risk, Kyron Williams at risk, and Bucky Irving at risk from the law of physics. The laws of physics are not in their favor. So I'm going to be underweight on those guys. If they're drafted early, I don't hate players. I hate ADPs. If these guys are if you're going to be drafting small backs that are at a disadvantage against NFL linebackers when at the collision point, then I'm going to be underweight. That's it. It's I think a straightforward exercise to go through the top 50 and just to circle the undersized running backs and say, I'm going to be underweight on this guy. Like, let's say on Underdog, I'm going to have less than 8% of this particular guy. Now, the exception is Christian McCaffrey. Because Christian McCaffrey has been the number one running back in fantasy multiple seasons. He's added weight, so he's now not quite 200 pounds. He's more like 202 pounds. And, he has proven himself that he can be a bell cow back even without the size.
Well, it's different, right?
It's just a different situation. Like you said, he's like Alvin Kamara. It's like, this is a different situation. This isn't a guy that was the consensus 101 last year,
right,
is in a similar situation this year. He was injury prone last year. He's injury prone this year. There's not a big difference. He could get in a situation where his body gets torqued in the wrong direction this year, just like it could have happened last year, and it did happen last year. Or in the offseason, he's found some strength and conditioning regimen or some supplement that helps him this year, and to burn a second round pick on that guy, that's worth the risk. The upside is the number one running back in fantasy.
Correct.
That's not the upside for Bucky Irving. The upside for Bucky Irving is an average season from Josh Jacobs.
Correct. Who also has been the number one or two running back in fantasy. So, yeah, I can't land there. I can't land the plane with Bucky Irving being, a second round pick. I mean, early in the offseason, you were seeing people saying, hey, would you rather have Bucky Irving or Jonathan Taylor? Like, come on, guys.
What?
What are we doing?
What
are we doing?
Doesn't make, like, even the upside of a Breece Hall, much better, right? Breece Hall, much bigger, much more explosive. Is he super risky? Do I feel comfortable drafting him? No. But in a tournament setting, like in this FastDraft Flex 4 game, yeah, that's a good pick. That's not an undersized running back. That's a running back with, a top 5 ceiling. Those are the types of running backs that I'm circling and I want to be overweight on.
I mean, top two finisher in 2023, 217 pounds, 4'3", had 76 receptions, paced the running backs in receptions in 2023. There's the question marks surrounding him have more to do with his situation than they do his actual ability. I mean, Todd Gurley, people doubted Todd Gurley back in the day because he was in such a terrible situation. All of a sudden, he gets Sean McVay, and he gives us two of the greatest fantasy seasons in recent memory before his body breaks down.
Yeah, I hated Breece Hall in the first round last year, hated Christian McCaffrey in the first round last year. Love him if I don't have to use a first-round pick on him. Love to get a first-round fantasy talent outside the first round. That's always, what I'm looking for.
Right.
It doesn't have to be hard. Fantasy doesn't have to be hard. Breece Hall is still very young. You could argue his situation has gotten better, that the offense will be improved with Justin Fields. He's not going to catch as many passes. That's understood. But also, Davante Adams isn't there. So there's not as many options to throw to. So, okay, Justin Fields, free agency, bomb. Like, it's a bomb that hit free agency. Fields to the Jets, because then everything changes. All the projections have to change for Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, everybody. What was your assessment of Fields to the Jets?
I love having Fields to the Jets. One, you talked about guys that can change the math. He changes the math in the run game because you have to account for him as a runner. And we've seen guys, just average Joes, Jags like Brian Robinson, break off and have big weeks because teams have to account for Jaden Daniels. So I think that changes the math in the run game, which is a positive for Breece Hall. That's number one. Number two, we also saw Garrett Wilson not Garrett Wilson, but DJ Moore have his best fantasy season under Justin Fields. I mean, it was 14 games, but it was 77 receptions, around 1,200 yards, and I want to say 5 touchdowns at just directly coming from Justin Fields to DJ Moore. So the questions about him being able to get the ball to an alpha, like an outside alpha wide receiver, I don't have those questions. The question is whether or not he can play good enough real life NFL quarterback and minimize those mistakes enough to stay on the field. Like if they're 3-14 this year, is it likely that they draft Arch Manning in 2026? Absolutely. So you don't have enough contract security for him to be just mid or worse, but you do have what I believe could be a top 6 to 8 fantasy asset just on the rushing prowess alone. And then you couple in if he has improved as a passer, you've got a Konami code quarterback for free.
I mean, Hall's receptions dipped by close to 20 catches last year.
Yep.
And that was with Aaron Rodgers. So I think last year we saw a bottoming out of Breece Hall. I think it's all upside now. This is what I'm saying. I think it's all upside.
Yeah.
He's probably going to catch a similar number of passes, but the upside is this is the year he crushes 1,000 yards by being super efficient. He's going to be much better than 4.2 yards per carry because of that Justin Fields threat. That's the Alfred Morris corollary where, hey, Alfred Morris runs a 4.8 40, but because RG3 is there and defenses are paying attention to RG3, Alfred Morris is running for 5 yards a carry. So Breece Hall is going to break off long runs. This is one of his specialties. He's super explosive, long runs. And that's all he needs. If it's really that one player near the line of scrimmage that takes the wrong angle at you, that's what sets up the long run. Yeah. And that bad angle sometimes is derived from, I thought the quarterback was going to take it. But they waiting. Got me to hesitate just for that fraction of a second. Bingo. That option play.
Bingo. So you have Justin Fields who's he's going to hold the backside defensive end, and that creates a crease. Now you have a guy who's running 4.3 at 215 pounds, getting a full head of steam, attacking the line of scrimmage, and he's going to outrun just about any linebacker in the NFL, and then DBs aren't going to be able to touch him. Truman Show, such a good movie. That's funny.
I'm in. I'm in on Breece Hall. I'm in on Breece just because at the moment where they were talking on the Sonic Truth podcast about how far he's fallen outside the top 10 running backs now. It's like, okay, now is the time to buy the dip on Breece Hall. We're calling it right now. We're calling it. Here we go. Do we have this little? Buy the dip. We're buying the dip on Breece Hall. Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson, you just said, is fine. There's no Davante Adams, so whatever lower pass volume that he's going to. Aaron Rodgers' pace of play last year was like 1.99, number 25 in the league. So he's always been a slow pace of play quarterback. Fields probably plays faster. It's hard to play slower, so he probably plays faster. And so Fields plays faster, and a few less dropbacks because he's scrambling, but the target share goes up without Davante Adams. It's a wash. DJ Moore had a career year with Justin Fields. Why not?
So you have the fact that before they traded for Davante Adams, I believe Garrett Wilson was on pace for close to like setting the record for targets in the season, which is, the record's 205 by Marvin Harrison Sr. He was on pace for around that number in the first 5 weeks of the season, 5 or 6 weeks of the season. Then it starts to slow down. Aaron Rodgers is playing buddy ball, whatever the case may be. He's running the clock down to 1 every play so he can figure out where the defense is coming from or where they're going to be aligned at. And on top of that, he doesn't like to use motion, so we could get Tanner Engstrand, the offensive coordinator, comes from the Lions with Aaron Glenn. They could incorporate some motion. He could be a Ben Johnson disciple and bring those principles to the Meadowlands. And now you have a totally different outlook with a mobile quarterback, with a home run hitting running back, and they're all looking for more contracts. They're both looking for more contract security. Like this has a chance to be an extreme value in drafts because you're not having to spend a premium on any single one of these guys to get them onto your roster.
Look at the FastDraft ADPs in the Flex 4 game. This is what we're talking about. There's James Cook. There's Kyron Williams. And we got to keep scrolling. There's Garrett Wilson. He's already fallen 3.5 slots because of this news. And I understand it. I get it. It's a mobile quarterback, and there's not as many targets. But he could lead the league. Who else? This would be a great bet. A good futures bet.
Yeah.
Garrett Wilson leads the league in target share.
Yeah.
Why not?
This is a lock. I think last year I statted him out for 160 targets. I think that he's pretty much, DJ Moore had 164 in total in 2023 with the Bears. So, yeah, I think that he's a lock for 150 just because there's nobody else there.
How could you draft Mike Evans over Garrett Wilson? That doesn't make sense. It makes no sense. Just like, go up here. How could you draft Bucky Irving over Breece Hall? No. Inefficient. This is what's happening on FastDraft.
But the offense, I
don't agree with it.
You have to believe, Matt. You've got to believe it. It can only get better.
Think about what could happen in New York. Defense implodes. Offense, struggles, right? Because there's turnovers and the offensive line is just they cannot rebuild it no matter how much they try, the resources they throw at it. And then it's funny to see like first round pick left tackles that the Jets invest in, and then I see them showing up on playoff teams. It's like, wait, what? Poor Jets, man, right? Like they're like, oh, I thought he was a bust. No, he went to Philadelphia or wherever, and now he's a starter. Okay. So
yeah,
unfortunately they struggle. They're snake bitten. Both of these New York franchises are snake bitten. And I understand quarterback, like you have that fact that like Eli Manning was like the most successful New York quarterback in the last few decades.
Sure.
Right. And the only one, you could argue the only successful New York quarterback in many decades was the one guy that was trained at an early age to be able to handle the media by his father and his brother. So that I understand. That I understand why Sam Darnold was a bust, why Geno Smith was a bust, why Daniel Jones was a bust. I totally understand that. But offensive linemen, there's no way offensive linemen are being dragged down by the media. It just doesn't make sense. The bottom line is the Jets are going to be in a situation where they're going to be in comeback mode against the Bills, right? And now even against the Patriots. The Patriots are on the come. So now it's you got Dolphins, Patriots, Bills, where you're just going to be down multiple touchdowns in the fourth quarter. What do you think's going to happen? What do you think that's going to mean for Garrett Wilson's numbers? How is this not clear? I mean,
massive,
right?
Massive amount of garbage time.
Aaron Rodgers did the bare minimum with garbage time because he just refuses to play fast. They still had to throw a lot. They still threw an inordinate amount. Aaron Rodgers rarely throws as much as he threw last year.
Right.
Just looking at pass plays per game. And yet that was the bare minimum because it's like a riddle. Like, how do you finish like top 10 in pass plays per game, but bottom 7 in pace of play? Oh, your team has to be horrible. You have to be down 10 in every game, and you're just squandering this opportunity. All Justin Fields has to do is choose to run the hurry-up offense when they're down double digits, because that was one of the most frustrating things about Aaron Rodgers, and that's one of the things I think that if you're ranking quarterbacks all time, it's one of the traits that I cannot get out of my head, that so many of these games, and I'm talking about, you go way back to the Packers against the Cowboys, like there's historic games for the archives where everyone is yelling at their television, "No huddle, dude.
Yeah,
play faster." And he's sitting there walking up to the line of scrimmage, surveying hard counts. It's like, dude, snap the ball. Go. There's only you're down X and there's 3 minutes left or there's 5 minutes left. What are you doing? That was the most maddening thing about Aaron Rodgers for me.
So again, you hit the nail on the head where you said, hey, we might have an opportunity here for not just more garbage time, just garbage time as far as the eye can see when you're playing the top two divisions in the top two teams in that division, in the Bills and the Dolphins. And then, them tickle fighting with the Patriots twice a year. That has a chance to go over now that you got Drake May at the helm and now Justin Fields. They could be battling it out. So I think that this is, to me, tremendous value. One, I love Justin Fields. I can't quit him. So this was great for me. And now it's better for Garrett Wilson. It's better for Breece Hall. Like I think that this is unequivocally a positive because you're going to get, so if they're bad, they're going to be really, really bad.
Yeah. Like this is amazing for Garrett Wilson. And this is the best thing. Like if they had brought in Sam Darnold, right? I mean, obviously they wouldn't, right? But there's no way, right? There's just no way. It's not possible. But even Daniel Jones, somebody, right? Let's say I was going to say, God, my God, they have so many washout quarterbacks in their history. I was going to say, what if they traded for Geno Smith? But they wouldn't do that either.
Yeah.
The Jets are so cursed. It's like, what if they brought Chad Pennington back from retirement? No, they're not going to do that either.
It's so bad.
It's so crazy. Like, I'm just thinking about all these potential quarterbacks, but they all started their careers as Jets busts. But let's just say somehow they upgraded some. I don't know. Some Joe Flacco, was he a Jet?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yes.
He was.
Yeah, it's a never-ending carousel of just terrible quarterbacks that they've had success before. They go to the Jets. It's the Bermuda Triangle of quarterback success, and it just keeps getting like you throw a name out there and you're like, yeah, he was a Jet at one point, man. You can't he's not coming back. It's
Yeah.
not happening.
But
So
okay, in a hypothetical fantasy world where we could pluck some pocket passer who's adequate, let's just say Derek Carr. Somehow they get Derek Carr's never been a Jet, right?
no, Derek Carr confirmed not a Jet.
I don't
Confirmed
think
never
he's
been a
ever
Jet.
a Jet. I mean, another cursed franchise for quarterbacks, but not a Jet, a Raider. But not he was never a Jet. Confirmed Derek Carr never been a Jet, though very easy to imagine him starting his career with the Jets.
I mean,
Very easy, right? You could imagine you could easily rewrite the history books and be like Derek Carr drafted by the Jets in the early second round, washes out, ends up with the Raiders. John Gruden revives his career. We could write that whole thing, right?
yeah, it's a story that you've told numerous times. Just change the name.
Yeah. So, but okay, not a Jet though. So they could have traded for Derek Carr, and then all of a sudden that snaps everybody into reality of looking at the situation for Garrett Wilson and going, oh, this is amazing. Garrett Wilson with Derek Carr, this is the unlock button. But because it's Justin Fields and because he is a flawed, limited passer and he's going to suck pass attempts out of that offense, his ADP is actually dropping, even though there's no more Davante Adams.
Just no more Davante Adams. You know, you've got him again. I can't get past the fact that it's a contract year for him, and you know that he's looking to cash in. He's gonna look at that Jamar Chase deal and be like, man, I need to get at least 80% of that. It's more probably gonna be around like T. Higgins money, whatever T. Higgins gets whenever he hits the open market. But I'm looking to get $30 million a year. I'm looking to get what Brandon Ayuk got. Like, why would we not bet on him?
Garrett Wilson is so much better than T. Higgins and Brandon Ayuk. Garrett Wilson's the real deal. He's an elite talent.
Yes.
This is crazy. Yeah. This is where he's going is crazy. Yeah. So trade for Breece Hall in Dynasty. Trade for Garrett Wilson. These are low points. And it's all fueled by the Justin Fields acquisition, and it's the perfect smokescreen, right? It's the cover that we need to go get these guys.
Yeah, there's some offense that every single year there's an offense that we fade that's like, man, that was a tremendous, like all those guys were great values in fantasy, but how did we miss this? How did we miss a guy with the rushing upside of Justin Fields, being with a guy with home run hitting ability, being with a guy that's a true alpha wide receiver? How did we just say, oh, no, I'm not interested in that at all?
And then somehow, like, Jameis Winston ends up on the Jets for the second half. Like, Justin Fields has a shoulder injury, and we get Jameis Winston for the second half somehow. That trade happens, or we actually do get Derek Carr for the second half. I mean, these are things that could happen. It's not necessarily going to be Justin Fields for the full season. In fact, it's very unlikely Justin Fields plays 17 games.
If they're awful, they're going to pull the plug on this pretty quick. I mean, $20 million into a $281 million cap isn't going to cripple you long term. So he's $20 million guaranteed, right? So that's not going to cripple you to say, okay, cool, we made a mistake. You know, Jameis is the backup. We're gonna tank with Jameis, and you just be our emergency quarterback. And we've got Jordan Travis that we'll try to do something with at the end of the season. So yeah, I completely see the point where they're 2-9, and they're like, okay, we've seen enough of this. We gave it a shot. It didn't work. Jameis, come take over. All the memes, all the funny post-game, pre-game speeches and press conferences. We need that. You know, they're going to rip you apart, but you have a level of don't care about you that it's not going to bother you. Why wouldn't we give that an opportunity? And then it's going to be good for Garrett Wilson because he's going to throw it to him no matter if he has 3 people on him, if he's single covered, if he's wide open, he's going to hyper target Garrett Wilson.
Speaking of quarterback trades, I read this on the Player Profiler news page. By the way, it's playerprofiler.com/news. Playerprofiler.com/news. I have it bookmarked. Last sentence. Okay. Scott Riley doing a great job. Patriots signed Josh Dobbs, and this matters. This matters because trade whispers around Joe Milton.
Please. Please.
Here we go. We go. Joe Milton to the Browns. Where can Joe Milton go? Joe Milton can go a bunch of different places.
He can go to a bunch of different places and be
Saints.
good, but I would love to see him. I would love to see him in an environment like the Steelers. Just let him run around and just throw rocket balls all over the field. He threw the hardest recorded pass in NFL history. I think it had like 63 miles an hour on it in game. Like Jordan Love had it when he threw a touchdown to Tucker Kraft last year against the Texans. And now in week 18, it was Joe Milton throwing that touchdown in the corner. I forget who the receiver was, but he now had the hardest throw of 2024. So just let him go. Just let him go run around somewhere. I mean, I'm looking at some of these locations. I mean, it's not going to be great from a team success perspective, but it could be really, really fun from hey, this guy is incredible.
Jacksonville. See? Jacksonville.
Yeah, I
mean, they're committed. The contract says it all. They have hundreds of millions of dollars committed to Trevor Lawrence, but Trevor Lawrence has never been a QB1 in fantasy. It would be fun. That's the type of thing where, Trevor Lawrence, he picks up an injury, end of the season, he's still struggling. They decide to give Joe Milton a look. This would be interesting.
Let's go further south in the state, Matt. Miami.
Why not Miami? See, I don't think though, but do teams trade in the division? I don't think they do. Do they?
They can, yeah. I mean,
I know they can, but does that ever happen?
Yeah. I mean, the Cowboys traded with the Eagles a couple last draft. It's not going to be a significant needle mover if you're looking to move. If the Patriots are looking to move off of Joe Milton, it's going to be a 5th round pick or a conditional 6th. They're not gonna get very much more than what they paid for him now.
Didn't the Patriots famously trade Lawyer Malloy to the Bills?
Yes.
I feel like the Patriots traded a safety that everyone thought was elite, and Belichick knew he was dust, and the Bills overpaid for him. They're like,
Gotcha. Yeah. No.
It was somewhat like Lawyer Malloy. I don't remember. Let us know in the chat if anyone remembers. That's going way back. That is going way back. Yes. Okay. So it could happen. Less likely. I mean, to back up Geno. Things go sideways with Geno. Things go sideways with Sam Darnold. There's so many places he could go, man. That would be interesting. Where the quarterback could go sideways. Joe Milton, baby. Joe Milton is mobile. Joe Milton has a huge arm. Joe Milton could finish his career with more fantasy points than Anthony Richardson.
That's wild. That does not feel good. That does not feel good. But you're 100% correct. Here's the thing. I don't want to stay there very long because it makes me real sad. But how do you trust him? How do you trust him as your guy? When it comes to contract time, how do you say, hey man, here's $300 million or whatever the going rate's going to be in 3 or 4 years? How do you do that? Let's say he plays his tail off for the next 2 years. Let's say the Daniel Jones thing is a wake-up call and he just goes out and he's great and he's a quarterback 1 in fantasy and they win more games than they're supposed to. How do you justify then the front end of this with hey, we've got to pay this guy $300 million?
If he's showing Josh Allen level ability, then you pay him. But that's not it. There's something missing in the intermediate areas of the field. He's not seeing the throws. They run the tape back, and there's a guy running wide open underneath, and he's not seeing him. There's just certain players they have the spatial awareness, and they see the dynamics in the field before they actually happen. It's like in soccer where a guy will kick a through ball before the player has even cleared the defense, but he sees it coming. He's played so many reps and he's seen it so many times. It's just instinctual. He knows that's where that guy is going to be. And the process that's going on with Anthony Richardson seems to be, I want to make a big play. I want to make a big play. I'm going to make a big play. I'm going to make a big play. I'm going to make a big play. It's not there, or I'll force it, or I'll run. And that was a nightmare for Josh Downs, because then Josh Downs gets erased from the game plan. And that's why this Daniel Jones signing is so good for Josh Downs, with this projection. Okay, we're probably going to get 6 to 7 games of Daniel Jones, and that's going to be a boon for Josh Downs. And I just don't think you need to worry about the hypothetical contract demands of Anthony Richardson 2 years from now.
So with Josh Allen, you never had those questions about whether or not he was putting the work in to improve. And that was more so my point, is like, I don't know, like, you've given me enough red flags to not ever be like, consider giving you what the market would command for someone who could accomplish what you are capable of. You know, reaching your ceiling as a player.
Someone's telling McAfee something, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's known the people in the building for 15 years at this point, 16 years. And
someone's telling him something. And
exactly.
If you're undeniable, if your work ethic is undeniable, then that's the story that's going to get out. That's the story they want to tell. Has anyone ever tuned into a football game? They love to talk about this. They love to talk about how Joe Flacco is trying to resuscitate his career, and he's showing up in the facility at 5 a.m. They love those anecdotes, and coaches love talking about it because it makes the coach look good, right? It makes everybody look good. All you need to do is feed people these anecdotes. There's no way there's this grand conspiracy in Indianapolis to hide Anthony Richardson's incredible work ethic from the public.
Right. They wouldn't do that. You want to put your franchise quarterback on a pedestal and be like, look at what we did, guys. Like,
even if it doesn't work out in the game, if it's a bad game, hey, he put the work in. This is something we're proud of, that he's, setting such a great example for the team, and he's putting so much work in the film room. And yeah, it didn't work out, but we saw flashes and we saw this, and there was one throw in particular which showed a next level understanding of the scheme that he was looking at, the defensive scheme, and how to solve it. And they would talk about this. They would find the one thing and talk about it, because it's awkward when you're sitting up there and it's all negative and you're grasping for something positive. But if the coach has nothing, that's bad. That's not good.
Yeah.
They're always talking about how everybody loves Josh, and Josh is, I was surprised by the coach speak around Josh Allen, because I was like, don't they see what he's got? A 55% completion percentage. These coaches are living in some alternate universe with this guy. But they were seeing him every day in practice. They saw something that wasn't materializing on the actual field in games in the regular season for 2 years. And, I should have listened more. Like, I should have listened more. And so now when I'm not hearing it, I'm like, well, right. Yeah. I remember where the signals were with Josh Allen, and I'm very aware of them now. And I'm tuned in. Give me something. And I'm not getting anything.
Right. I mean, this is one, you have to understand that Pat McAfee is a serial Colts supporter and apologist. So whatever's happened that's changed his opinion this drastically, it's enough for me to be like, okay, well, this is just not. This is not. It's not good. It's not. It's not ideal.
So we've done some good work today. We've learned and figured out together that this Justin Fields acquisition by the Jets was the most impactful for fantasy. Not necessarily for Fields himself, but for the value exploit that it's created. And it's interesting because I thought the clear and obvious most significant signing, most significant transaction was Davante Adams to the Rams. I mean, to me, I made a whole video about this. It's going to be up on YouTube. So go to YouTube, Player Profiler. I'm going to talk about it. I'll talk about it in the monologue of this show, I'm sure. To me, it's such a slam dunk that this guy who is still, he was top 10 in yards after the catch. You just imagine Deebo Samuel's face when he sees the yak numbers for Davante Adams at 3 years older than Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel's like, how the hell did he do that? Right? So if you're still showing either yak per target, or ADOT, target depth, on a per target basis, then that's a signal to me that you still have the juice. Whereas Cooper Kupp, the yak diminished and the ADOT collapsed heading into 2024. So we saw this coming. Davante Adams, completely different guy, has the burst, 84th percentile burst score. Cooper Kupp, 10th percentile burst score. So Davante Adams had the burst coming into the league. He has a lot more fast twitch muscle fiber, and he has an incredible work ethic. His work ethic's right there with Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp gets more anecdotes about his work ethic because of all of his film work, but Davante Adams is putting in incredible work off the field to have this level of efficiency still at this age. And you go back, you look at Steve Smith, 1,300 yards in his age 32 season. Larry Fitzgerald had some of his best seasons in his early 30s. So this is not unprecedented. There's been a lot of receivers that have fallen off by age 32. But Davante Adams, to me, he needs to be drafted ahead of, say, Mike Evans. That's the perfect example. You want to have two guys that are similar age, same draft class, 2014 draft class. Give me Davante Adams all day. I think Davante Adams still a great value, but no longer the most significant signing. I got to go with Justin Fields now, but what do you think of this Davante Adams to the Rams?
I mean, I absolutely love it because you've seen Matthew Stafford at various points in his career support two mega relevant fantasy options. You saw it in 2023 when Cooper Kupp finally got healthy and Puka got off to a historic start where he ended up, setting the rookie record for receptions by a receiver. And then you saw it earlier in his career in Detroit where he had Megatron and Golden Tate. And you know that they went so run heavy because they figured out something in that offense broke when Cooper Kupp could no longer handle the load. And you know that Davante Adams still has that ability to carry a passing offense, but he doesn't have to now. So you slide Puka into, they're going to be creative in how they scheme up their receivers. They use the condensed splits. They use all of the ability. They use everything within Sean McVay's brain power is married with Matthew Stafford's processing and ability to understand what a defense is doing and the ability to put it anywhere on the field. And I think that this is a slam dunk. I mean, you were spot on in saying that to me, it's a significant signing. Obviously, quarterbacks are going to outshine and outweigh receivers, but this is a hand-in-glove fit to get someone that could step into a Cooper Kupp style replacement and fit in immediately. He didn't lose a step. He's just going to an offense that's going to be able to utilize his and maximize his strengths and accentuate them in a way that he probably wouldn't have that opportunity to do anywhere else.
I mean, he was still putting up like 12 targets in a game with the Raiders. So it wasn't just a function of, oh, I have Aaron Rodgers and he's locked in on me. I don't care who you are, right? I don't care how long you've been friends with someone. Averaging 12 targets a game for the month of December at age 31 on a team that is going nowhere, that is in tank mode, that is out of contention. If there was a player that you wouldn't be surprised that he tailed off at the end of the season because he just lost interest because he's used to winning, well, the Raiders probably cured him of that. But, right? So he's like, oh, I'm used to this. I'm used to this losing thing now. I'm over it. I'm over the whole winning thing. But you could imagine, okay, makes sense. He puts up a great month with Aaron Rodgers, but then he just sort of, coasts at the end of the season. Oh, no. Even the final week of the season. What do you have? 12 targets? 20 fantasy points?
He was a league winner down the stretch. The fantasy playoffs, he absolutely was a league winner.
Crushed. It's not out of the realm of possibility that he actually has more fantasy points than Puka Nacua this year. He's Davante Adams. It's not likely. It's probably going to be Puka, but he's Davante Adams. And yes, the target depth has declined year over year, like 10.5, 9.5, 8.5. But this also happened to Larry Fitzgerald. It's happened to a lot of players. And if they maintain other skills like yards after the catch, just football skills, separation skills, strength of the catch point, all things that Davante Adams is great at, you could still win, even if you're not necessarily a downfield threat. And depending on how they deploy these two players, they may put Puka more in like an X receiver role and put Adams in that volume slot Z, West Coast offense, volume role.
They use their receivers in condensed splits, and use Cooper Kupp. He ran like 5.5 miles in that Detroit Lions game because he was in motion almost every single play. So yeah, I think that there's a world where he's just still the otherworldly talent from 2017 to 2022, where he just kills every single year. But the safe money is to bet Puka to take the step forward.
Of course. But Puka's ADP needs to come down a touch.
Correct.
This is not going to happen. That's not going to happen, though. You're not going to see that happen. There's certain players that the fantasy community is so locked in on that their ADP, even in the face of like an obvious upgrade of the target competition, won't go down. Because there'll be some reasoning like, oh, now defense will have to pay attention to Davante Adams or some nonsense. No, it's very possible that they are on par, and that the way that Puka outproduces Davante Adams is just with a higher yards per reception and more touchdowns, but that their target share is similar. That I can see happening very easily. In fact, that's what I expect to happen.
Yeah, it's there's more than a 20th percentile chance, maybe 30%, where Davante Adams gives you 1,312 touchdowns on 575, 600 Matthew Stafford attempts.
It's an open question. It's in the chat, and the Fantasy Plumber disagrees. The Fantasy Plumber thinks that they went and got Adams because he is a proper X receiver, and they've wanted to move Puka into the Cooper Kupp role. I could see that too. I don't know what they're going to do. All I know is that Puka has the body and has the experience playing X in that Rams system. And it would be very interesting to see what you could get from Davante Adams in that volume slot role. That would be very sexy. To have Davante Adams matched up against slot corners for the first time, if he's still operating at the peak of his powers, this is why it's exciting. It's possible. They very easily could flip it and say, no, Puka, you've been watching Cooper Kupp play for the last couple of years. Now you can play that role. Maybe they do. I don't know what they're going to do. Has Sean McVay announced what they're going to do? How they're going to
No.
configure the offense? Why would he?
Yeah.
But you'll hear about it on Player Profiler News if he does.
You know it.
Seattle. They get Sam Darnold. They shed most of their receiver room. So they've got a guy named Bobo. They've got a few guys. They literally have a Bobo left. That's what they have left. It's JSN and Bobo. Isn't it Bobo? Jake Bobo?
Yeah, Jake Bobo.
Yeah,
yes.
it's literally people were in the chat on the Sonic Truth show yelling at me in all caps, "What about Bobo?" Like, put respect on Bobo's name. And I was like, didn't this guy run like a 5.040? Like, this is not a real player. Like, what are we talking about? But that's what's left. And so what do you think the plan is in Seattle?
Draft Matthew Golden?
That's pretty. That's a pretty great skill match. Can they draft him there? Is he going to go earlier?
So he's moved. So Jeremiah's initial mock had him moving into and being taken by the Steelers at 21. So the Seahawks have pick 18, I believe.
It's gonna be close. Guy runs a sub 4.3. He's from Texas. It's gonna be close. Pick 18. Ooh, so close. If they get him, he's a must draft there. If they can get Golden there, that's gonna that I'm sure people will be mocking Golden to the Seahawks consistently now. But I mean, the Colts won't draft a receiver. That's the last team that needs a receiver. Falcons could draft him. You could absolutely see the Falcons doing it, like an upgrade on Mooney. They could see that as an upgrade on Mooney. The Cardinals could do it. That would actually be a great match as well. An upgrade on Wilson. They don't have any field stretchers of consequence there. Miami, probably not. That would be too redundant. The Cowboys, you could see the Cowboys going for that. That would be great for CeeDee Lamb. Like, basically, hey, we're upgrading on Brandon Cooks. You could easily see the 49ers doing this. We're losing Deebo Samuel. We have Ayuk coming back from this is a skill set that we need. Interesting. So the Bears are not in the conversation.
Right.
But I think that the 49ers, Cowboys, Falcons, Cardinals, all in play for Golden. So that if Golden can somehow navigate his way around all these teams and make it to Seattle, that'd be pretty cool. I would love Golden there. Oh my God. Is that best case scenario for Golden?
Probably the Cowboys, but the Seahawks would probably be a close second.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So because San Francisco with Juwan Jennings and Ayuk coming back, that would be muddled.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dallas, it's a clear. You're competing with Jalen Tolbert. Like Jalen Tolbert, you will just be a situational player, and Golden's every down with Dak and CeeDee Lamb. Okay, that's the nuts. Atlanta might be a better situation too, because that you have Michael Penix, a better quarterback. Drake London is sort of a lumbering inside receiver who commands targets at a high volume, sort of like what we want Davante Adams to be, right? At this point in his career, Davante Adams is really Drake London, and they just need to play him where they play Drake London. So I could see that being a real sexy place to take over the Darnell Mooney role in Atlanta.
They still have such a financial commitment to Darnell Mooney, though. So I don't know.
No, they're not. They wouldn't. So they not in the long term. You're right. So okay, Dallas, best case scenario. Is Seattle better than Arizona?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because you're just competing with JSN and Noah Fant for targets.
Yeah, Trey McBride tilts the math against the Cardinals. You want Seattle, man. I like Matthew Golden. I like Matthew Golden a lot. I'm
Yeah.
I'm
I
I'm
mean,
just I'm
I
suddenly in on all these Texas guys. Xavier Worthy, love him. Xavier Worthy to the moon. Adonai Mitchell with Daniel Jones, who says no. Matthew Golden, would have been a dominant receiver at a lot of other schools, but he had the Quinn Ewers handicap and lots of target competition. And I love that Santana Moss archetype.
mhm.
I love that he came in as the Santana. Like, I have to admit that I get convinced about players on occasion based on the comp. And when I saw the comps on Matthew Golden, they were all receivers I liked. And you can go to data analysis, the data analysis tool on Player Profiler. You can pull up the 5 closest comps. And it's like 190-pound receivers with a high BMI that are super fast and incredibly hard to bring down. Guys I like, Golden Tate. I love guys like Golden Tate. I love guys like Santana Moss. This is my guy.
Well, an important point too in that offense, you just saw what Kubiak was able to do with Rashid Shaheed as a deep threat, and you know that that's a staple of the Kubiak offense is trying to take deep shots down the field. So you have JSN in much more in the Olave role where he's commanding targets and dominating slot receivers in the middle of the slot defenders, nickels in the middle of the field, and then you have Matthew Golden with 4.29 speed taking the top off of the defense, consistently being able to get over the top in that Rashid Shaheed role. But I think he's a more complete receiver day one walking into the NFL than Rashid Shaheed is. And I love Rashid Shaheed.
I mean, 67% catch rate as a junior. Didn't command the targets, but again, a lot of target competition. Excelled in special teams. This guy's just a good football player. The versatility is incredible. The versatility for Xavier Worthy. He's not just a Deshaun Jackson deep threat. Every time they comped him to Deshaun Jackson, I'm like, he's not Deshaun Jackson. Enough. This guy has the complete route tree at his disposal. Right? Ladd McConkey wasn't a mega producer at Georgia. It's these elite programs just have a lot of competition for touches, and Texas has the most NIL money of any program in the country. So they're going to get the guys that run the 4.29s.
Yeah. I mean, this makes too much. It makes, the more I think about it, the more this makes a ton of sense. And then to go back to your Ladd McConkey point, I mean, they were in a super run heavy offense with a guy with a target share dominator in Brock Bowers, and then just there was never going to be a path for Ladd McConkey to put up dominant numbers, but you watch him play football and it's like, oh, that guy's consistently getting open. And then you watch Matthew Golden at Texas, and he's consistently getting open, and depending on what type of day that Quinn Ewers decides he wants to have, he gets, he has a great day or he doesn't.
Dude, Arch Manning with those weapons. It's too bad Golden came out. I mean, I love that Golden came out. He had to come out this year because he's like a top 3 receiver in this class. Of course he's going to come out. But, yeah. Had he stuck around with Arch Manning, that would have been fun. That would have been really... It's too bad. Like, what could have been? Like, sliding doors. What we could have had. Right? Another old movie reference. Sliding Doors probably came out the same year as The Truman Show.
Wow.
Now, what about the Steelers? The Steelers, they get DK Metcalf. I feel like this is a similar situation where an acquisition is going to suppress the ADP of a wide receiver I like, because I like George Pickens. George Pickens is the opposite of DK Metcalf in many ways. George Pickens is not the mega size speed specimen that DK Metcalf is. He is just super competitive. If we did another body swap where George Pickens' mentality and intensity could be paired with the DK Metcalf physical traits, this would be a top 5 receiver every year. This would be a guy competing with Jamar Chase every year. But it's not. One guy is eating candy and just doing the bare minimum and getting by with absolute, top of the food chain athleticism. And the other guy is just going ham on every single play. And it raises your expectations of a George Pickens.
Well, the room just got a lot better.
It doesn't necessarily mean that just because they look like redundant skill set players, like 2X receivers, I'm not so sure. I don't know what's going to happen. They clearly I trust the Steelers. The Steelers are one of those few organizations where the Rams, there's a few teams where I'm like, okay, this organization understands how to get the most out of players. Mike Tomlin is one of the few coaches I trust. Mike Tomlin, Sean McVay, there's just a couple guys, they've been around long enough where it's like, okay, you got me. These guys are above average. I trust these guys. For this organization that typically drafts wide receivers so well, to go target DK Metcalf to bring him in, they must have a vision for how they're going to get a lot out of Metcalf, but also get the most out of Pickens.
The scary part here is you have to follow the history of how Pittsburgh does their wide. Like they allocate the salaries of their wide receiver room. So you pay one guy and then you let one guy go. George Pickens, we all know, going into the last year of his contract, it's already being rumored that he could be a hold-in the hopes for a new contract. So that signals to me that they're looking to make they're looking to get some sort of security so that they don't have to pay George top of the market money for the things that, obviously the top end, the high end, the positive outcomes, those lend itself to George being an otherworldly Omega level talent. The flip side is you have way too many moments where it looks like, what is this guy doing? And why is he doing the things that he is doing on a football field? So they have to get the quarterback position figured out. But I think that them giving DK Metcalf $150 million just kind of signals to me that they want to move on from George. They potentially want to move on from George Pickens. And that stinks because I love him in a Steelers uniform. I love his skill set, but I think that they might be willing to move out of the George Pickens experience at the end of 2025.
George Pickens was number 6 in air yard share last year. George Pickens was top 15 in target share.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, do you know where DK Metcalf finished in target share last year?
Oh, it's not good. It is
21.3% for DK Metcalf. That was number 42 in the league. He also had a high air yard share. So now the Steelers have 2 receivers that were top 10 in air yard share last year, but who was better in both of these metrics? It was George Pickens. George Pickens is a better, more versatile receiver than DK Metcalf. However, if I'm the Steelers, I keep George Pickens at X, and I actually move DK Metcalf to Z because DK Metcalf is better on double moves. I say, hey, let DK Metcalf either do a bubble screen or run a go. Like, that's all you need. DK Metcalf's great with the ball in his hands. He's big and strong, right? And he can get deep. Don't ask him to run intermediate routes. Don't ask him to beat opposing alpha cornerbacks one-on-one. That's not his strength. Clearly. So I think they can both win if they actually deploy DK Metcalf at Z. I think it's actually a very important turning point in his career where he's never been a polished receiver, and so he was never going to go up against a Sauce Gardner and win. But the way you get him out against second and third corners and you get him, playing against zone coverage and just pushing the envelope of the defense deeper, or
Yeah.
giving them a challenge of, okay, what do we do? A bubble screen to DK Metcalf. This is kind of scary. It's a scary situation. He could break a tackle and be gone. I hope they do that. And in that situation, his target share is not going to be anything close to Pickens. Pickens will dominate him in target share, but he's going to have some spike weeks, be very inconsistent production from Metcalf, but he could have some spike weeks. That contract, man, it's a lot of money for DK Metcalf.
And the Steelers let the money do the talking, man. And that's what gives me the cause for pause to think that they won't flip it and just decide to make DK the primary. Not saying that's the correct thing, because I do believe George Pickens is unquestionably the best receiver in the NFL on throws of more than 15 yards outside the numbers. He's a 75-25 catch guy. He comes up with those balls more than any other receiver in the league. So if you're going away from that and you're just going to you don't use him in that manner, then you're not getting the maximum juice out of the squeeze.
Wouldn't it be nice if you're George Pickens? I mean, this is the one situation where I can say, okay, they don't have a number 3 receiver of consequence. They have a tight end who is solid, but not necessarily like a George Kittle level target commander. Okay, so it's basically a consolidated target distribution. They don't have a starting running back on the roster yet. Jaylen Warren ain't that. I want Kenny Gainwell to be that. I would argue Kenny Gainwell is a better player than Jaylen Warren. It's at least closer than the ADPs would suggest, the dynasty ADPs in particular. It would be nice to have Gainwell out of the backfield. That would be another option. But it's a consolidated target distribution without a number 3 receiver that's going to command targets. So it's similar to like what the Rams had last year, where it's just always going to be either, okay, it's Puka and Kupp, it's Kupp and Puka, and then a little bit of Higbee. That's what I see here. I see it being Metcalf and Pickens and Metcalf, and a little bit of Freiermuth.
I agree.
If the quarterback is a pocket passer, then we're really in business, Justin.
Say it.
If the quarterback was really good at, say, back shoulder throws, if he knew how to push the ball outside the numbers, whether he plays slow or plays fast doesn't really matter, because the targets are so consolidated and they don't have a running game anyway. They're going to have to throw. Aaron Rodgers?
Let's go.
Aaron Rodgers?
Let's go.
This is the match, man. This is a match made in mediocrity. Of course. There's no one's saying any of these guys are going to be top 10 receivers or that Rodgers will be top 10.
But we got a chance.
You want to get the most out of Pickens?
We got a chance.
This is the scenario.
We have a chance. Much more of a chance than we would have with Russell Wilson at the helm.
Okay. Here's my problem, though. Here's my problem.
We have a chance.
I'm looking at the FastDraft ADP, Flex 4. And Pickens, he is not a discount. Like, FastDrafters know that Pickens should be drafted in this, DJ Moore, Zay Flowers zone. And the addition of DK Metcalf will likely push him down. So while Pickens probably was not a value to this point, this is pretty much it's all about upside in this format. So it's understandable why he was being drafted here. I think with the target competition coming in, especially with the big contract, my guess is that his ADP falls outside the top 40. And I would rather have Xavier Worthy. Give me Xavier Worthy.
The value is on the Worthy side, unquestionably.
Yeah, give me Xavier Worthy. But so I think that's what's going to happen. I think that you'll find Pickens hovering around this like Shakir Rice zone in a few weeks.
And he's got to fall.
That's when he becomes a value.
Yeah. I'd still take Rashee Rice.
Over Pickens.
He's got to go a little bit further, like bottom, just almost out of the top 50 for him to be, for me to feel great about the value, what he could return, in my opinion.
All right. Code's Podfather on FastDraft, $25 deposit match. Interesting. All these receivers moving teams. Now you got Jackson Smith and Jigba has that offense to himself. Do you think they're just going to run the ball? Is that really what's going to happen? Whether they get Golden or not in Seattle, it's just going to be Kenneth Walker, some Charbonnett, Kenneth Walker?
No.
I
mean, that's not what they were doing. That's not what they were doing in New Orleans last year with, in the first, before their offensive line all went to the gulag and spent the rest of the year on IR. They scored the second most points or third most points in NFL history in the first 2 games. So they were opening it up. Derek Carr looked like 2016 MVP caliber Derek Carr. There's no way that they're going to decide to just say, hey, let's play Pete Carroll ball. Let's play high T establish it football. And we have $100 million quarterback that we need to figure out if he's the future or not. I don't see that happening.
Who would you rather have in best ball? T. Higgins or JSN?
Ooh. Give me JSN.
Okay, well, that's interesting because, again, on the FastDraft ADP, Higgins at 22, and there's been drafts since these transactions happened, and hasn't fully corrected yet. Has not fully corrected yet. JSN up 2, but he has room to run. There's a lot of these running backs that are between Jackson Smith and Jigba and T. Higgins, and so I think that Jigba moves maybe into the early 20s. We'll see what happens. We'll all be checking the ADP together.
Important to note that T. Higgins was legendary in the championship week, and so that's what's probably crystallized in people's minds is him putting up a 40 burger for your teams in the fantasy championships, and so that's what's going to stick out. That always provides people with a bump going into that next year, especially in March. Now, when we get closer to the season, when after the NFL draft, like you said, Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to bump up because the target picture right now is crystallized with him being the number 1 target, and T. Higgins. Yeah, we could get 120 target season out of T. Higgins, but I mean he's never surpassed 1,100 yards. He's never hit double-digit touch. I mean, I think this was the first year he hit double-digit touchdowns.
Oh, yeah, this past year, yeah.
Yeah, so people are going to do the same thing that they did when he was hurt all of 2023 after his good 2022. You bought at a premium, and you get left with a flaming bag of dog crap on your doorstep, and you wonder what happened.
I like Terry McLaurin. I still like Terry McLaurin there. But there's all these running backs in between, right? So if we go back to this ADP, you see Terry McLaurin is down here at 32, and Higgins is up here at 22. Doesn't make sense to me. Look at these running backs. He goes Irving, Jacobs, Breece Hall, Chase Brown, Kyron Williams, James Cook, Chuba Hubbard. All right, so a swath of running backs there. Who is by far and away the most vulnerable running back that I listed?
Give it to me one more time.
Irving, Jacobs, Hall, Chase Brown, Kyron Williams, James Cook, Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah,
most vulnerable.
It's Bucky.
No. So
you don't think so?
Bucky Irving is vulnerable to injury because even if he gets the workload they're projecting, the catch-22 is he's probably going to get hurt. So he's vulnerable in that way. However,
so then we'd have to go with Chase Brown.
Well, Bengals offensive coordinator Dan Pitcher, per the Player Profiler News Desk, said the team is looking to add a bigger back, in quotes, with a little more power repertoire, a little French repertoire, this offseason. So props to Dan Pitcher for the vocab, and props to Dan Pitcher for stating the obvious. Okay, and something that we've been talking about. They're moving on from Zach Moss. So when a team moves on from a player like Zach Moss, what do they look to do in the draft? Replace Zach Moss with a better Zach Moss. This is how NFL teams think. This is what they're going to be doing. Is that a threat to Chase Brown? Absolutely. Why? Because this draft class is so stocked with talent. If they go out and draft Ollie Gordon or they go out and draft Damian Martinez, that's not good, man.
It's not ideal. And then you enter into that weird territory where Chase Brown's in the third year of a 4-year deal and the clock can reset with the bigger back who is going to be cheaper. And we know that the Cincinnati Bengals are in cap purgatory, cap hell, whatever you want to call it, with having to decide on, they're going to have to pay Jamar Chase in like moon real estate to get to make sure that he's happy. He's not going anywhere. You owe T. Higgins $26 million this year. Chase Brown is going to be on the furthest thing from your mind in terms of retaining his services. So,
right.
Yeah, once you repeated it, I was like, okay, we talked about Bucky, but this is an important thing to note and something I've had my eye on as someone who's had a ton of Chase Brown in best ball and on dynasty rosters.
The guy that is going to blow minds, and it's a funny comp that we have for him. I think his comp's probably like David Montgomery, which is great because, Iowa State connection. This would be my just the peachiest pick for the Bengals because it would blow people's minds. They would be just inconsolable. This is real. This could happen. This is exactly what they're trying to do in Cincinnati, is get a guy like this. This is who they want. This is who Dan Pitcher is talking about. He would be a problem for Chase Brown. Kaleb Johnson's a problem. I so want this to happen. Please, we can clip this. We can play this on a loop that I called this.
Now, where does that slot Kaleb Johnson going in the draft though? Is that day 2 capital?
Yeah.
So I mean that's where he's been at thus far.
Yeah.
That's scary. That's scary.
They're gonna draft a defender in round 1, and then they think that there's this glaring hole at running back. Travion Williams gone, Zach Moss gone. They got no one behind Chase Brown. Chase Brown is not the most fundamentally sound running back, so he terrifies them. And so they're going into the draft with running back circled as a big position of need for the team. That is just the reality of how the Bengals are going into the draft. Fantasy gamers are not thinking that because Chase Brown was a big hit last year, and that's the focus. They've solved the running back problem. They have Chase Brown. They've moved on from Mixon. It's all good. Nothing to see here. That's not what they're thinking in Cincinnati, though. That is the issue. When there's no one behind you, when there's no depth behind you, if you're Kyron Williams, you're in a much better shape because you have Blake Corum. And so there's the temptation to go running back in the second round is not there for the Rams. It absolutely is there for the Bengals. This is what I'm saying.
I just have so many defensive needs. It gives me a little cause for pause.
How many times have we heard this? Team X has a lot of defensive needs. Why are they going offense? Why'd they draft a receiver? They didn't need. Oh, they'll do this too. They'll draft like a special teams player, right? You've seen this.
Yeah.
Team X needs a defender or needs offensive line so badly, and they go out and they draft Tyquan Thornton. And you're like, what the what?
So
right? I mean, this is what I'm saying. Of course, they're going to use 17 on an edge rusher. We know that. Or corner, whatever. They're going to go defense at 17. They need it bad. Safety, I don't know. Best safety available. But then at pick 49, dude, pick 49, this is Caleb Johnson territory. I'm telling you. You think they're going to be efficient with their picks? Come on, man. Then they're picking again at 81. They're picking again at 81. Could be a number of players.
I'm going to throw a late round option out there that I've had my eye on. Rocket Sanders, Raheem Sanders. It's the physical archetype. He's 6 foot. He's 200. He's listed on South Carolina's website at 242, but he went into the combine at 217 and ran 4.47. Yeah.
He was like, I'm 242, and he weighs in light and runs a 4.7.
No, 4.47.
Oh, 4.47. Oh,
yes.
Rocket Raheem.
Yes.
I didn't think he ran a 4.7. I was about to look it
no.
up, but
no. Yeah. Oh, fact check me.
No, I misheard you.
Yeah, no, he ran. So he was listed on ESPN at 230. He was listed on South Carolina's website at 242, and he goes to the combine and he runs 270. He weighs in at 217 and runs 4.47.
Oh, baby. I can see it. Even that is a problem.
Yes.
If you are acquiring a running back from this class, he's probably really talented and had a better career in college than Chase Brown. Though Chase Brown did have an epic year at Illinois. Chase Brown was really productive.
Yes. I was about to say, I was like,
it's that last year
was really good.
It's going to be tough. But, I mean, every time I look up, I see all these guys, 1,400 yards, and then 1,600 yards, and then 20 touchdowns. So, but yeah, it is worth it to do. He's vulnerable, but it is worth it to just go back and just look at the college stats one more time for Chase Brown, because 1,600 rushing yards on 300 plus carries.
Yeah.
And 13 touchdowns. So that was he had a very 2025 running back class season. That looks so special, but that's just most running backs in this class had a year like that at some point.
Yeah. So the whole reason he fell to the 5th round is because he was awful at the Senior Bowl. He didn't know how to pass protect. He did it was really bad. And so the Bengals scoop him up, and he's obviously made those improvements. He was incredible last year, but that 5th round draft capital and the fact that he's not the Joe Mixon archetype that they stuck with for so long, it just gives me cause for pause.
Yeah, that final season was good. I'm looking at it again. I'm like, wow, this guy.
Yeah.
It's just, I've seen too many things, man. I've seen some things.
Yeah. I mean, you play the game for long enough.
It's like we would love nothing more than for, let's say, the Cardinals to finally replace James Cook. But no, because they drafted Trey Benson last year and they like DeMarcado, they're good. Right? They don't add a replacement to James Conner from this draft class, because ultimately it comes down to they like DeMarcado. And we're just all like, what? And then the team that has Chase Brown, they're the ones that draft the guy that should have gone to the Cardinals. This is what happens every year. I'm just saying, this is how many years have gone by where we've been projecting the Dallas Cowboys to go with a running back.
I mean,
and we're just holding it. We're like, wait, they're going to go with Donald this year? Yeah. Turns out, yeah, they are. So it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be a very fun draft. I'm very excited. We're going to be in Tampa broadcasting all the rounds, every pick. It's going to be very exciting. Cody Carpentier will be leading the way again, especially on day 3. I don't know where we would be. Where we would be day 3 without Cody Carpentier, I have no idea. He is the MVP most years. I mean, since we've been doing the draft coverage. So we're very blessed to have him and Alex, the Roster Watch crew. It's going to be great. It's going to be a big production. I'll get you out of here. Give me a bold prediction, dude. Give me something you think is going to be, come out of nowhere this year. That's fun.
Michael Penix scores more points than any other quarterback in that 2024 class outside of Jaden Daniels.
I like it. Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.